Hey there and welcome back to another Fruits Basket video. And damn, it's really been a while since the last one of these things. I didn't really notice it until now, but there's been a gaping hole in my life where Fruits Basket used to sit. Still can't believe it's all over. But at least we have this fresh piece of content for the franchise that serves to act as a bit of a wrap up to the story of Kyo and Toru, whilst also shedding some light on the relationship between her parents and giving us an insight as to what Toru's dad was actually like as a person. The show sort of implied he was basically just a proto-Toru, but here, we get to see him in a more three-dimensional light. The outer shell, which is the personality that Toru tried to emulate, mingled with a bit of a cheekier, almost Shigure-esque personality. But anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. But first up, the prelude focuses on summarizing the events of the show to give a little bit of additional context to the audience, mainly from the Kyo and Toru story arc. It's there to ramp up your nostalgia, get you into the headspace of the show, remind you of the key events, and most importantly of all, it serves to pad out the runtime quite significantly. Seriously, the first 30 or so minutes of this thing was just a recap montage of Kyo and Toru, with a little bit of narration slapped on top of it to keep things flowing nicely. And don't get me wrong, I did love it, but also, I wasn't there for this, you know? I was here for new content. And yeah, I get it, they needed to fill out the time slot, but it definitely threw me off a little bit, and it certainly wasn't what I was expecting or really wanted at all, but whatever. It's not like I paid to see this in the cinema or anything, so it doesn't bother me that much. But yeah, at this point, after we get a little bit of a look at Kyoko and Toru's life together, we jump into the new stuff. We start off by taking a look at Kyoko's youth. She was a wild child, in a gang, constantly in trouble, fighting, waking up in alleyways, all that sort of stuff. In her words, she ran with a bad crowd and did bad things. And like many people in the franchise, she also seems to have had trash parents. What a surprise. A father who didn't care about the family whatsoever, and a mother who was so caught up in appearances and what other people thought of her that she didn't focus on her family. And so Kyoko ended up slipping through the cracks, and they never acted like a family, and they hardly even ate together. I mean, Jesus, this franchise. Like nothing else, it just makes you depressed. All the child abuse and neglect it shines a light on, I don't think I've ever consistently hated a set of characters like I do the majority of the parents in Fruits Basket. And then on top of that, she even says she never even remembered getting hugs. Seriously? And this whole sequence is made even worse, as from the show, you know the broad strokes of her life. Her life sucked, she meets Toru's dad. She has Toru, she's briefly happy. Then her husband straight up dies and she's left depressed. She claws her way back to happiness before she gets hit by a car and killed, leaving her beloved daughter orphaned. What a depressing tale that is. But the show must go on, and so we learn, now her dad's physically abusive too, saying she's the type of person that the world doesn't need, slapping her across the face, and her mum just does jack shit and then has the audacity to ask, where did we go wrong with you? God damn. At this point, I'm feeling like I need to climb through the screen in this scene and just shake these two fools. And also, the mum blames her for getting the dad angry, and thus he's going to take it out on her later. And the neighbours are going to talk as well? Come on. And so, after rightfully telling them that she didn't ask to be born, it's off into the night she goes on her bike. And so then it cuts to the next day, where she's being accosted at school by her teacher, at junior high, where she's getting manhandled and screamed at. Not sure this guy is really cut out to be a professional carer for children, but okay. I mean, he gets angry, and then gets violent and aggressive with the kid. Good one, mate. Seriously, dude needs to chill. And of course, she responds to this by freaking out and getting angry, because why wouldn't you? And she starts to get violent, and so the teachers ditch her in the counsellor's office. And who should turn out to be there already? But Toru's dad, Katsuya. And okay, so yes, he's an adult, and this is junior high, right? I get he's a student teacher, but aren't they usually most of the way through a teaching degree, so, would he be over 20? And she's 15 at the oldest, if this is junior high, and my brief research into Japanese schooling says that's the age she'd be at the oldest. And so yeah, I understand this is considered romantic to some, but I feel like I'm the meme of the monkey puppet giving side-eye to this whole thing. But yeah. This whole thing's weird, because on one hand, you recognise that this sequence, this massive chunk of the story, it is meant to be viewed in a really romantic light. The guy swoops in, he understands her like no one else, he cares about what she has to say, he banters with her, teases her, but in a cute sort of way. He takes her out for ramen. Even when they'd only just met and without the school's permission, he cared for her. He gave her a cutesy nickname. He opens up to her about his stormy relationship with his dad. about how although he's nice and sweet now, when he was growing up, he was very strict and stern. He openly flirts with her every day at school when they're alone in the dark stairwell. They have private lunches, alone on the roof of the building. And he causes her to want to become a better person. She starts skipping out on her gang. She starts attending classes and studying and pining after him at all times. And then on his last day of teaching, he drives her out to the ocean. And really, all of this is just really good character development and a good way to develop their relationship. There's no fat in this storyline. It's all just contributing to show the dynamic the two shared before his death and the people that they were before they were married and they had Toru. It was just really smart narrative flow. And all of this did kind of wipe away that age gap from my mind for a little bit. Kind of like how House of the Dragons managed to convince people that an uncle grooming his niece and marrying her is deeply romantic. But I digress. But anyway, for the sin of wanting to better herself, Kyoko gets bashed by her former gang and her parents kick her out. And reality just kicks you in the head again as Katsuya appears to get her parents' permission to marry her because she's underage and thus he needs legal documentation. Woof, that is very sobering indeed. How she even makes jokes where she basically calls him a pedo and tells him it's a good thing he's not going to be pursuing a career as a teacher, because he's kind of a predator. So yeah, I guess we all just have to move past the ick factor from this point on. But yeah, he calls out her parents, he gets her dad's blessing, because he doesn't want her as his responsibility anymore, and off she goes with him, ready to start their new lives together. And before we move on, I did find it quite amusing that the only time the mum bothers to try and intervene with any of this is in this moment, where the dad's basically gifting her daughter to some dude he's just met. But too little too late, lady. Too little too late. Anyway, they end up married and they have a very nice and wholesome looking life together, and I really enjoyed these scenes. They really serve to lower your defenses and suck you into the wholesomeness, their sweet daily routine, their puppy love phase, working through Kyoko's fear of being a bad mother, having Toru and enjoying their little family, seeing what a sweet and attentive father he was. It sets you up for that devastating sucker punch of, remember, this is a prequel, and this guy dies. And it's like, oh no, go to the doctor, dude, go to the hospital. We all screamed this through the screen. Don't wait until tomorrow. It's that phenomenon where you know that something's coming, because it's a prequel, but part of you thinks it's not going to happen. This time it's going to be different. He's not going to die. The whole of Fruits Basket is going to be remade, but now Toru has a dad. Even if Kyoko still gets hit by the car, it's going to be fine. We don't have to be sad just yet. But of course, he does die. And we enter the bleak stage of Kyoko's life that is covered in her death flashback episode from the original series. And this is just a major bummer, really. Really quite depressing. Especially when her piece of shit dad just calls her to tell her, by the way, I still hate you and you're not welcome to come home. You or your kid. Never call again. Bye. Man, what a world-class asshole. But yeah, eventually she manages to come out of the other side of her depressive episode and take care of Toru properly again and move past her grief. And then she dies too. And honestly, I think aside from the creepy age gap, this was a very well-written segment. One that really served to flesh out both Kyoko and Katsuya in interesting ways and make them more than just the two perfect parents they were presented as. Because they're dead in Fruits Basket, I feel like all the characters look back on them with rose-tinted goggles. They can do no wrong. They're always perfect. But here, we get to see their flaws and their struggles in a way that we couldn't in the original. And it's very compelling. And honestly, I could watch a full-length show about their married life. I don't even care if I'd end up sobbing at the end when he dies. It'd still be great. But anyway, moving on, we then get to finish off on a nice look at Toru and Kyo's early life as a couple, reflecting those early days of her parents' marriage, but without the gloomy spectre of doom clouding the scene. Because we know that this ends up being a much happier ending for everybody involved. They're not going to die early here, and I like that. This was just a truly wholesome and sweet and cute scene, and the perfect way to finish their character arcs. And I also like that it looked like they've kind of rubbed off on each other, taken some traits from the other person's personality, like a real couple. Kyo is much more gentle and sweet and easygoing, and Toru, she now has a bit of an intense and stubborn streak. And it's really fun to see, and in turn it makes them feel more three-dimensional too. And so yeah, that's where our story ends. And it was really good. I very much enjoyed myself here. It was nice to get back into this world, even if parts were a bit repetitive, and some parts, you know, the age gap, have aged like milk. But regardless, I think the overall message was wholesome, and it leaves you with a nice warm feeling. But yeah, just before we finish, once again, student teachers, please don't date your students and please don't propose marriage to a student weeks after finishing your placement. It's weird and creepy and you'll go to jail. And that's enough of that. But anyway, with all that being said, these are just my opinions and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the prelude? You like it, hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe and let me know.